Round 7 is brought to you by Fab Counter. The go-to life counter app is now available on iOS and Android. The app has plenty of useful features, like life adapted to which hero you choose. You can keep track of time in the round with a built-in timer. There's a history to keep track of life changes, and it also supports up to 8 players for Ultimate Pit Fight. Get the app and up your game today.
All right, welcome back to round 7 of the Battle Hardened. I am Anthony Zakella, joined by Ryan Aldridge, and we're going to call the game for you guys.
So we're going to take a look at key cards for this matchup. Looks like Rousey Ancients and Endless Winter for Oldhim's side. Hopefully we see a couple of fuses coming from that Endless Winter and some Rouse effects going on here.
And over on the Dromai side, we have Passing Mirage and Miragai, but also super important is Dust from the Red Desert, typically in this matchup, to kind of set up an endgame. So let's see what happens.
How many Ash Wings do you think we're going to see on this match, Anthony?
On the board at once?
Yeah.
Oh, 15. Zach Wallach said Zach Wallach said he had 15 once against Oldhim, so we're going to see if Luke can get there.
I think 12 is the magic number I've seen. So if we see anything above 10, I think Luke is in a good spot here against this Oldhim.
Let's do it, Luke. All right, so we're starting off with Luke. He's just going to play a Sigil of Solace, gain a couple life. And then
start getting in that Ash pitch too. Really setting him up for a strong start turn here.
Mm-hmm. It looks like that's all he's got for the turn. Oh, okay.
That's hard to beat a double Sigil at the beginning there. Oh, my.
So I think that Trent just wins this game, right?
46 pretty hard to come down. Especially on turn 0, too, in response to his Sigil. I mean, that's pretty good.
I don't know much about Flesh and Blood, but 46 is more than 43, so I think that's just it.
Pitching a Remembrance and a Terra Sunder as well. Mm-hmm. It's going to set him up pretty good for late game.
We're going to block by Kyloria.
It's a 3-block, right? Taking 1.
It looks like this one's going to be kind of grindy, so I think we're going to be here for a while, kids.
It will be here for quite some time. Lots of hammer swings, lots of dragons on the board.
Of course. So,
lots of poppers.
Yeah. So I think another key card that wasn't on the list is Ghostly Visit. That's usually the reason the Miragai and the Passing Mirage are so important. If this plays out the way that I think it's going to play out, probably what happens is a whole lot of nothing until that Ghostly Visit has 20 counters on it. A lot of chipping, a lot of hammer swings, and then when there's 3 or 4 cards in each deck left, you just see, hopefully he can drop some kind of way to lose Phantasm Assemblance or something and come in for a huge number, but we'll see if that plays out the way we think it is.
Yeah, it's typically the plan. You want to run them out of poppers and make sure that get that Ghostly Touch activation all the way through. Hopefully there's a semblance in this deck to guarantee some sort of activation of that Ghostly Touch there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now I've seen some Guardian players, and I don't know that this works all the time, but I've seen some Guardian players kind of just ignore the Ghostly Touch and just throw Glacials for 10 every turn. I don't know what Trent's list is like, but I'm not sure how effective the aggro strategy is into Luke. I don't know what his deck list is, but it could be, it could be something we see. It doesn't look like Trent is going for that, though. It looks like he's going slow and steady to win this race.
Yeah, I think his play is just to outvalue the Dromai here, from that 4 damage a turn. When he does get the chance to activate that Rousey Agents, not wasting any poppers on those dragons.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So we see a Phoenix Flame in the pitch stack. So I wonder, typically with Empress Dromai, you would see a Crown of Dominion on top, but it has Crown of Providence, and maybe that's just hedging. But this might be the red line Dromai deck, in which case that's kind of scary because that has a much tougher time into Oldhim. Typically this matchup, you either get ran over or you get fatigued just because Oldhim has Remembrance as a key card. I know that if this is Empress, there's not any, yeah, it looks like it might be Empress. So we might just be stacking up a bunch of Ash and spamming the board late.
Yep.
That kind of changes everything, right? Have you had much experience playing against Empress?
Not too much. Most of the Dromai I do play against are more of the mid-range kind of late game setup with especially with the builds I play, especially Dorinthia, you play towards the late game as Dromai and wait to clear under 20 health and just spam dragons.
Sure.
A lot of our locals here do play a similar mid-range package. Empress Dromai is very scary though. It can go very fast and get out of control.
Yeah, I always said the
If there-
Empress. Go ahead, sorry.
If there was a turn where where Trent doesn't have a popper in hand, it will get.
Oh,
out of
for
hand
sure.
there.
100%. And the other thing about Empress is basically every attack in the deck, with the exception of the dragons, is a breakpoint. And maybe Billowing Mirage, but everything... Oh, I guess I'm wrong.
Tomotai.
I guess
Yeah,
I'm
that's a good
wrong.
one.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting deck list. Maybe he's got a little bit of tech from one, a little bit of tech from another. So if Tomotai hits the board, what are you blowing up?
Probably either Null Rune or Crown of Seeds, I would say, are the two targets. Again, I'm not a strong Dromai player, so those would probably be the two targets I would go for.
Sure. I've heard that actually it's more important to blow up the Mill Rune because you can kind of chip them down with Burn 'em All.
Yeah.
If you can get them off Arsenal. So if...
He does take the Crown of Seeds here, it looks like.
Mhm.
So no more Arsenal generation. Probably putting Trent in a weird position right now. So he recovers.
Now, I have seen some big Dromai decks on Remembrance, so it's possible that he just gets that Tomotai back later and pops the AB and then just kind of goes 1-1-1-1-1-1, you know?
Yep, it's very possible this game is going to go very long, so we could see 2 activations here, possibly.
It's got a hammer coming in for 3. I think the most dangerous thing that you can do in this matchup as Dromai is underestimate that hammer swing. You can see the life total. The difference is 10 already. Luke is back down to 34. Trent is at 44. And you'll end up taking 3 or 4, thinking like you're getting tempo, and really you're not doing any damage. And by the time you need to set up a huge turn, you just don't have the life, and you're blocking with 2 cards every turn.
Yeah, that hammer does value over turn very, very quick. Probably see a lot of activations of the hammer throughout this game. Once Dromai gets lower in life, we will probably see some bigger attacks come through, but not for a while, I would say.
Having to use a staunch response on a Blaze Headlong can't feel great, but I mean, Dromai doesn't really have a ton of huge attacks. Maybe I'm really confused by this list because it looks a lot like Empress Dromai, but there's a Tomotai, so I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of amalgamation. It's his own kind of take on both.
Yeah, it's interesting. Those were pretty perfectly timed defense reactions here too. Glow and stuff. We do see a facial, so I think he's holding on to the pop. Probably.
Yeah. Do you find much success? Do you find much success in kind of splitting the difference between decks? I feel like you either go all aggro or you go all control, but I feel like when you try to play mid range on a deck that does aggro and control both really well, you actually end up just kind of nerfing yourself. Do you think that's true, or do you think that there's a world where he can play a mid rangey Dromai that can be aggro and can be defensive and still get the same results?
I think you find the most success picking a lane and sticking to it throughout the match.
Sure.
So as long as you pick that strategy from the get-go and stick with it, you will find more success with that. Pivoting during a game is usually when you're on the back foot and don't really have any other options. You kind of have to go to your last resort.
Yeah, I think that's true, especially when you're doing like a fatigue plan. Like you're either all in or you're not. I see 100%. That Luke has pitched. I can't remember the name of that dragon. The one that doesn't.
Thamai.
Oh yeah, so Thamai. If that's a Thamai, I'm going to say this is Mara's list with a Tomotai in the sideboard. Because there's no reason for Thamai to be in this list other than Mara likes that it's a breakpoint and has high health. So I'm going to say this is probably most likely some iteration of Empress Dromai, which is kind of confusing that he didn't play the Gold Crown, the Royal Crown, Crown of Dominion to get a jump start.
I wonder if it's more for breakpoints on hammer swings here, preserve some more life, and maybe he didn't think that he needed the Ash generation to start it.
That's totally possible,
though. Does the Maya stop Crown of Seeds as well?
No, I think it's only cards. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty
only
sure
cards, right? Yeah. Okay. I'd say that would be a pretty interesting tech to stop Oldhim in his tracks, but alas, it isn't.
I was gonna say I'm a bit surprised that we don't see. Well, I was gonna say I'm a bit surprised we don't see Van Brace, but I suppose that Ghostly can be such an important part of this matchup that you have to be in your run. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, I think that he opened up a lot of doors for getting rid of currencies at the start too. The lack of personal cycling too is pretty hard to pivot to when you're used to playing that deck for so long.
Sure.
I'm wondering if he did that as well to kind of throw a wrench to kind of throw him on the back foot.
We see 4 Ashlings.
Right, there's 4.
We're almost there, baby.
There's
Well, it's there. Now, I will say Trent has been doing a great job of clearing dragons. So he knows what he's about in this game. He knows what he's about. He's going to clear dragons. He's going to minimize taking damage. He's going to say, I'm going to crown every turn. I'm going to de-react with Earth, and you're going to run out of cards before me unless you went to 72, in which case I'm still going to run you out of cards faster.
Be surprised if he swings on Ashman here too.
Yep.
Exactly what he's going to do.
I don't think we're going to get to 12, brother.
I don't think so. I wish, but unless we see an Uvia activation, I don't think they're going to get that high.
Now we see the combo in his hand, which is actually pretty cool. You drop the Burn 'em All.
Yep.
You get rid of all those attacks. It's going to take him a while because we're pretty deep in the game, and you just throw Nourishing Emptinesses in the end game. Now, against Oldhim, I don't know how great that is because of the ability to use the shield and the crown. Against Bravo, once all their armor is broken, it's kind of cracked, actually, because you get a huge advantage. If they don't kill you on the follow-up turn, you have a 5 or 6 card hand, and then you just go all in, and they take their hand, and you just win the game from there.
Right, using the tunic to prevent that extra arcane damage there.
Interesting.
Dragon.
I would think... Oh, he blew it up. I was going to say, I would think you use the tunic to crown, but he doesn't have a crown. So.
Yeah, he doesn't have a crown anymore. He has a tunic on top of his tunic.
That makes things interesting.
I was going to say, yeah, it changes the game plan a lot. I'm sure Trent has been top currencies. I'm sure he knows how to navigate this just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it does change the game plan a lot for this Oldhim player.
Oh!
There is our third sigil.
So we've seen 4 sigils this game between both players.
And clearing the last Ashman.
Yep.
Right. Nothing too surprising so far. I mean, this looks like the pretty standard Oldhim control list.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect anything crazy to come out of here. But he's doing a great job clearing those dragons, keep the board clean. Eshghy.
Now, I wonder, the last time I saw this specific matchup played, although the build on Oldhim was a bit different, it was Tarek Patel versus Mara, and it didn't go great for Mara. Luke seems to be holding his own all right as far as this goes, but also Tarek's deck was a lot more aggressive. Now, that matchup went, I want to say, an hour and a half. It was a really long matchup.
Yeah, that was a long match.
The problem is that if you try to fatigue Dromai, you have to play really fast because it's really hard to fatigue her in time. And if this is a top 8 match, no problem. You just sit there and do your thing until your brain is mush. But in Swiss, you got to be careful.
Yeah, pairing into Dromai in Swiss, if you're planning on fatiguing, is probably going to be an issue for you. Unless you play at the speed of light, it will go to time, most likely.
Now, it's interesting. If I remember correctly, the end game for Luke should be something like Chromai, Time Snap Potion, Passing Mirage, Swing with the arms. I haven't noticed, because I wasn't sure that this was the same list. Have you noticed that he's been pitch stacking his Chromais, or have they come on the board? I don't think I've seen any yet.
We did see a Chromai in hand last turn. I think he did pitch that away,
okay.
Or he arsenaled it. I'm sure.
Okay.
We did see a Time Snap Potion early on as well, a couple turns ago. Don't know. He does have a passing in hand as well.
Yep, passing to the bottom. It looks like Luke is actively setting up his end game, which is good that he at least knows the plan, which is a good thing, right?
Yep. I mean, 4-2 into a battle hardened, I'm sure you have an understanding as to how to play this matchup.
Of course, yeah. Wow, interesting. So Trent is telegraphing that he does not have a popper. Or maybe he doesn't have an action point after that. So I guess if Luke got greedy here and snaps, he could blow up the Yendurai, which is kind of annoying because of that endurance counter.
Yep.
I don't know.
Well, if he did pop that, he could have put an additional burn on the board, correct?
Yeah, he could, which would be great.
That would probably be something he wants to avoid. So I think taking the 3 damage there and stopping the additional.
I don't know if is that a mulch. So he did have a popper.
Yeah.
I actually don't know if it's a bad thing to get a second burn 'em all on the board when Trent has AV1. He's going to run out of cards in his grave eventually, and his grave stack doesn't look that big, but you can throw a decent amount of cards on the table pretty quickly in this deck.
Sure.
And if I remember correctly, there's only 6 blues in this deck, so getting reds in the grave isn't that difficult. I'm
saying more for Trent to avoid popping that. I I think he would actively want to avoid getting a second one on the board.
Mm-hmm.
If we do think about this, though, this would have been, I think, 4 or 5 damage that he would have taken if we did actually go for the gold. Well, he still would have Crown of Seeds, so I guess he could avoid that. He would have to activate the response.
That's an interesting situation, though, right? Because if he does pop the Null Rune, it forces Trent to be on Arsenal to mitigate the chip damage.
Correct.
So you can consider that maybe Luke gets in an extra 1 or 2 damage every turn and starts chipping away.
Yeah, it's very possible. It also forces them to crown early, too, as well. But I don't think we've seen Trent without an Arsenal.
Interesting. Luke is going to let Burnimal die.
So. Yeah, I think it was more to threaten some damage. I think putting the Passing Mirage on the board, too, as well, did leave him with the possibility of getting a second one. He can some damage there.
Sure.
So I think it did put him in a good position. Low, covering that up.
Looks like we have another one in hand. It's probably going to go in pocket this turn.
I expect so.
So Luke has the combo. He's got the Flame Call. Let's see if he can pull off some Ash generation with that Flame Scale, some free value. There goes the Sync. And now, I guess if he pitches, I mean, he sends in 3, but I don't know what he's going to follow it up with because he doesn't have the resources.
Yeah, a bit difficult. The most he can probably get here is pitch into Flame Scale for additional Ash generation there.
Mm-hmm.
What it looks like it's going to do. Checking a Faithful Seed and Sink Below to the bottom.
The problem with this play is, oh, he did not use it yet. So yeah, he's just going to throw the Phoenix Flame at the furnace to get an Ash, it looks like. So it's not nothing. It's not nothing, but it's kind of a nothing burger. And that's no shade on Luke. This is just a hard matchup. He has 3 resources. That'd be cool if he could do something with them, but I don't think he's going to.
Yep. You see one wasted popper there on Awakenings. Mm-hmm. I think he's just trying to bait out some poppers.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that he let the Burnimal die, because it seems like he has a decent amount of red still in the pile. And at the very least, he's forced with making a really bad decision, right? Pitch a card to prevent 1. I mean, it's something. It gets cards out of his hand. Without Burnimal on the table, Trent kind of just gets to do whatever he wants, you know? You really need to set up that 5-card turn for Luke to even think about pushing any damage that's meaningful.
Pretty awkward hand here from Luke. Sigil to Passing Mirage and Snatching. So maybe Snatch into a Passing Mirage off of the snaps, but that doesn't seem like a lot of value.
No, it doesn't. That looks like what he might be doing now. But I think, again, if we're setting up an end game, he might want to just activate the Furnace with the Passing Mirage and throw the other one in Arsenal. Sure. And it looks like that might be what he's doing. Yep.
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable play.
The problem is with 2 Passing Mirages, at this point in the game, all of his finishers are maybe 1 or 2 turn cycles above that in his stack. So I don't know that he'll see them at the right time. Maybe he has to go to 3rd cycle to make it line up properly.
Interesting hand here. We could get some Ash Wings, which is looks like we're going to do here. Get back up to 3.
I think this is the 3rd one, right?
Back. I believe this is 2nd or 3rd. I can't recall.
I think it's the 3rd one. So
I know at least we saw 1 activation.
Mm-hmm.
So this is probably... We do have a Dromai and a Mirror Guy in hand. Probably want to save those for later.
Yeah, I feel like you want to work those to the bottom of the stack. Maybe you activate Flame Scale, drop the Passing Mirage, and call it. Oh, maybe not.
Mirror Guy seems like a reasonable play here. At least get that 1 Ashwing in.
Mm-hmm. I feel like maybe you swing with the Mirror Guy and then just send in the 1s because it's bad value for him to back him.
It's 2, right? It's 2 Ashwings, basically.
Yep. Oh, so that's exactly what he did.
I'll take 1. I got myself at 28. I didn't update. Yeah, 28. 28 now 36. Like, why is he taking 28, 36. I took 1.
Now I wonder
slowly chipping away.
Yeah, I wonder if Trent is on a full fatigue package in all of his matchups, or if this is just a sideboard situation. We have seen a lot of D-reacts.
We We have, but it does seem like he has a lot of threats as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is just how he plays into the matchup and plays for second cycle.
Sure.
It seems like a reasonable strategy. And there goes the mirror. I will say he's doing a great job of clearing the board. This board has been cleared for almost all of the match with just a few dragons.
Mm-hmm.
The fun cards in hand. Looks like we have an E-Strike, and the Maul, Mirror Guy, and a Dustin. Potentially a lot of damage that we could threaten here.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of depends on how we help this.
I feel
we do have that passing as well.
I feel like in this situation, I would probably just scoop it up. I'd be like, well, I could do this for the next 40 minutes, or I could go get a cheeseburger at the snack bar. But
it are the one-track mind of aggro decks with some slight mid-range capabilities.
You know how it works, man. So we probably just see this for 7 coming in.
Yeah. It's pretty reasonable to just come 7, chip some damage. Beat the dragon on board, threaten. I mean. So in this matchup, what are you saving snaps for? Are you saving them for a snatch turn? What is it exactly that you target?
I think in this specific situation. So when I play Empress, I almost always only save snaps for 2 situations. The first is if I have tempo and I need to keep them off of a hand and I get a brick hand. Or at the very end, you can drop like rabble, snatch, snaps, break something, and then come in with the arms. You basically want to save it for a situation where you can pull a bunch of cards out of Trent's hand and then threaten with a really big finisher to kind of end the game. But to see that happen, we need to get Trent to way lower than this. He needs to probably be sub 10.
Sub 15.
Yeah, sub 15 at the very minimum, depending on how big those arms get. So we do see Luke playing out that Dromai, which I don't know if that's the best plan. The thing is,
we did pitch 2, so this is only the third one that we've. This is the third one we see. We see 2 pitch to the bottom of the deck.
So we do see Peace of Mind come out. So this is definitely full fatigue, right?
Oh yeah. Has to be.
The problem here is that Luke can only set up so much without giving Trent an opportunity to just send 10s at his face.
Yeah.
So Luke, unfortunately, is in a situation where he has to drop threats on the board, or else he just gets massively punished for it. And you don't, as the quote-unquote aggro player, want to give Oldhim any breathing room.
Rabble coming in here. So this could be a turn. His headlines. Oh.
Now, I'm kind of surprised in matchups like this that we don't see Uvia, or we haven't seen an Uvia, and we haven't seen a Necria. The 7 defense sets up an awkward situation for Trent. Although the way that Necria's life does go down is kind of not that big of a deal for Trent, and Uvia might be interesting to just get a bunch of Ashwings on the table.
Interesting hand we have here. Looks like we have E-Strike as well. Maybe he'll finish this off. Passing.
Mm-hmm. Does he have a... Yeah, but he doesn't have another card to pitch to the E-Strike, or to bottom, it looks like.
No, he does not, unfortunately. Looks like he'll just hold it. But he does have that extra... Yep. So pocket that E-Strike.
But the issue now is, I guess they're keeping up pressure, right? The issue now is that he's just going to kill the Passing Mirage with the hammer, most likely.
He does have the Braga as well, so there's 2 Phantasm Stalkers.
Sure.
Board.
One attacks and one doesn't, so we go for the one that attacks.
Exactly.
And we see a Nourishing Emptiness again, which is, again, kind of why I wish that Luke had been able to keep that Burn 'em All out a little bit longer, because it can be such a pivotal card in this matchup. Now, this is a great combo, right? You come in with the Dromai, you get your 2 action points, because it can't be popped, and then you can do some interesting stuff. We do see Thamai coming on the table.
3/4 is a very healthy dragon, so it is nice to have this on the board.
Mm-hmm.
He does have to have a popper in hand in order to swing at it and kill it, so it does represent more sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
Dromai activation first. Makes sense.
Trent almost forgot that there was no Phantasm on that guy. You see him shaking his head. I feel like this is one of those matchups where you have to play so quickly to avoid going to time that sometimes you can make really little tiny mistakes that maybe over the game add up to a loss. We do see, though, that Luke has basically evened the life total. So he's doing work. That's great. It's just going to come down to, does he have enough cards in his deck to do the work that needs to be done?
That's a long-haired dude who was eyeing up those cards on Trent's side. gave that a side eye. I appreciate that. Whoever you are, you're my legend.
He said, what?
Yep, cover it up here. Probably be leaking 1 damage here.
Was that a pulverize we just saw come on the table?
I don't know if he was like...
We see you, Trent. We see you. Mind games over here. This man says, I'm going to keep it. Don't worry, I'll heave it next turn.
I'm going to hold on to this next turn.
But that's the pulverize. The best part of pulverize is that it does 2 damage, but what it really does is it swings tempo completely in your favor. So if we can see Trent...
damage.
Yep.
Your pulverize really does 2?
Well, I'm going to throw 12 cards at it, right? I'm going to throw 12 blocks, so 4 cards. You're going to lose tempo. And then I just take tempo, and now I'm throwing 10, 10, 8, dominate, 10, 12, whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that Trent is doing just fine.
Did they nerf pulverize?
Yeah.
Only 2 damage?
Only 2? I think Trent is doing just fine in this situation. But I think if it was me, and I'm not saying I'm a better Oldhim player, because I'm definitely not, I probably just try to... I don't know what's in his arsenal, but if it's something small, I think you just throw it out of arsenal, heave the pulverize, and punish the next turn. Because Luke is kind of getting through, right? We see it's 20 to 28. It looks like Luke is making headway.
The problem is that if you heave that pulverize, you have to have 2 poppers in hand. Actually, you would have to have 3 cards in hand, because you only get, is it 3 seismic surges?
You get 3.
It's 3.
Let's heave 3.
Yeah, so you still have to have 3 cards, and he has Dromai on the board, so he can just negate your popper for that turn.
But I mean, Luke is only threatening 6 damage. Do you really care if he can throw 14 back at him? I don't know if you care that much. I guess Luke. That's a
rough reveal.
Yeah, I guess Luke can threaten a lot more.
Yeah, I think it depends, right? If Dromai wasn't on the board, I think that it would be a reasonable idea.
Sure.
But with Dromai just sitting there menacingly and doing nothing but giving him more action.
Just taunting. Just taunting.
Just taunting him. Wanting it.
Mm-hmm. Good for you, Dromai. You go.
Why?
Dromai gets popped by a chokeslam.
Which I think we're happy with. We still have Dromai.
Mm-hmm.
Probably hammer swing.
Yep. There it is.
Yep.
Now it looks like we've hit the pitch stack because we see another passing mirage. So I think in order to make this effective, he's going to have to go to 3rd cycle. So I think we just throw a bunch of attacks. Can you tell how many counters are on that Ghostly Touch? I can't see.
I think that is 12.
Okay, so
counters.
He's getting up there. He's getting up there for sure.
Getting close. I haven't seen the semblance.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's going to have to rely on time snap, passive.
I think that's the move for sure. I think ideally you want to drop the Dromai, swing with the passing mirage up, and then drop a time snap and pop it or something like that. Some combination of those 3 cards. Yeah.
Some kind of combination of those 3. And peace of mind. That card does not give me any peace of mind.
Nope, it does work.
It haunts me.
As a Dory player, how do you feel about peace of mind, buddy?
I hate it. I hate everything about it. It never existed. It should be banned. I do like it into Kano, though. It makes me pretty happy.
100%.
Or not Kano, sorry. Because this only does actual damage.
Oh, it does. So it's not an Oasis. Okay.
Oasis is my buddy.
Yeah, Oasis into Kano off of a wildfire is always great.
I wrote AB1. I mean, I still lose the matchup almost 80% of the time. But
I still remember watching you play FAM with your Uzuri deck and dropping AB1 with 6 blues. I was
AB1,
like,
AB1, baby.
Oh, man, I love you. Go fast, bro.
It's all right. I scared him enough to miss lethal 3 times. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. You got in his head.
Exactly.
And that's kind of the beauty of Uzuri, right? She's just mind games.
Yeah, I think that's part of the fun of it, right? Is you're able to control not only what's on the board, but your opponent's mindset too. So if you do one play where you get 1 damage over just by doing some interesting line with like Nerf Scalpel or something like that in response to their defense reaction, it really gets in there.
I wonder if Uzuri becomes one of the S tier decks, if the difference between people that can win against it and lose against it is not the cards that they play, but their mental fortitude. Like
the tilt factor.
Yeah, the tilt factor. At Pro Tour, we should hold a cardboard sign that has tilt factor, and we can do like that little hand. We'll just beep, 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 beep.
The tilt counter.
Yep, exactly.
Excited for Pro Tour?
Yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm probably going to do horribly, but I'm excited to hang out with the boys and play some side events. I told everybody that my game plan is to scrub out at the Pro Tour and then just farm Ira Learn to Play side events. Just be like, yes, my first time.
I'm a new player.
I've never played before. What's this Ira girl do?
Ira?
Ira, she seems cool.
Oh, 2 damage on the second swing. Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I dropped my cold foil Kodachis on the table. Be like, I don't know, they were in the box.
Cold foil Ira would be the real friends. Come on,
dude, that's like a $4,000 card, but it is a pretty one.
I'm barraging Metamorph on the board here. I'm not sure what he's trying to get out of this. Maybe just damage.
Yeah, I think you just have to throw threats. Otherwise, you give, especially Trent can't really afford to go to 12, right? So he's gonna have to have an answer for this card. So if he pulls 2 or 3 cards out of Trent's hand, he's doing his job. The problem is you have to set up those big turns. I think we see a card in Luke's arsenal that's been there for quite a while. I have to imagine that's a combo piece for the end game. However, by not being able to set up 5 threats per turn, you're kind of nerfing yourself. So we'll see. And it does look like he blew.
Interesting choice to pop them.
Yeah.
If he was activating the hammer, maybe he's pitching the cycle. But the popper and then activating feels kind of.
So Trent just gained 3 life. So this is
we're at 12 life gains so far.
Yep. This is sigil number 4 on his side, I believe.
Yep. Amazing, riveting gameplay. Nothing against the player. I'm not a big fatigue player.
Is Oldhim a real deck, or is it just solitaire with more steps?
I will say, watching.
Here we go, boys. Luke responds with his own.
I feel like if you get 6 life gain activations, you should just be gaining.
Was that the mercy rule, like football?
Yeah.
Mercy,
18 life in a turn.
Fab has been reduced to high school football. If your freshman team is losing by 17, you all just go home.
No, I think Oldhim's a real deck. Watching at the AGE weekend, or AGE April last weekend, kind of seeing how much skill it takes to pilot a fatigue deck. Watching Hugh play and being able to fatigue some players. I think it's a real deck. I think the challenge is that you're going into a matchup without a winning game plan, and you're relying on your opponent to fatigue themselves in time. So you're entirely reliant on your opponent losing the game for themselves.
So we see Trent with a piece of mind coming on the table. It looks like 2's still. Oh, I lied. It looks like 2's going to get through, but it's not going to get through. So
it is not.
Luke did a great. See, this is what I'm talking about. Luke did a great job of pulling all the cards out of Trent's hand, which is what he needs to do. But that last card in the arsenal needs to push some damage, and it's just not doing it. It's been sitting there.
And it's a Sunkiss.
I saw Trent's list, and there's 1 Sunkiss, and I prayed that there was a Moonwish, and there was not, and I was so disappointed.
So we are at 15 life gain. We're almost at the mercy. I believe that Ponder is from last turn.
Yeah,
I think he activated Ponder.
When you're playing this quickly, you're gonna miss those tokens half the time.
Yeah. The tokens aren't necessarily a big deal. I was just curious.
There it is.
There we go. Figured it out.
Unless Trent figured out the infinite Ponder hack.
This is the infinite long token. So we're pitching another Nourishing Emptiness here.
So again, he's setting up that great end game, but he needs to get those Burnamalls because there is a ton of creatures in the graveyard.
7 Ash.
So we got our snap.
We got the timestamp.
So we got our first part of the. We have 2 parts of the combo up. Unfortunately, the arms are still not even close to being big enough.
No, but I think we'll get there with a little bit more time. Trent's doing a great job of just clearing these dragons with his hammer too. I think that really helps out in this matchup too, and not getting the ghost and touch counters.
Yep. Now, if we're going for a God, what is he gonna get? What's he gonna get? 3 more sigils, baby.
Sunkiss.
Oh, we're going for the end game. Okay, so we're setting up the You're Dead package.
I think we're just going for poppers. Yeah. Looks like 3 blues.
Yep. So in normal circumstances, each dragon represents 4 life against Trent, which is great. However, when the goal is to get them out of cards, man, you're just doing extra work that way. I think Luke is in a weird place. You can see his pitch deck. His hand is a little awkward too. It looks like he has an E-pot, some other blue stripe, maybe 2 E-pots in hand. It looks like
you see a burn 'em all at the back.
Okay, it looks like he has a Trom up front, maybe.
Yep.
So his hand is super Akko Taco right now.
Not a whole lot he can do. I don't remember what is in person.
Yeah, it's been there forever. It has to be a combo piece.
I think it's a combo piece. Oh, there's 2 burn malls in here.
Just drop both, bro. You have 75 cards. Oh, don't pitch it. Just drop them. Get them out there.
E-pot on the board.
You just go burn them all, E-pot, and then you start burning through those cards so you can start throwing those 6 dominates for the +1 intellect.
Yep.
That's what I would do. I mean, I don't know. I haven't played this deck.
He doesn't have that many attacks, right?
No, it does. Yeah, it does. He has...
I mean, in his graveyard.
Oh, in his graveyard.
I know he has a bunch of dragons. I don't think he has many attack actions in his graveyard.
Yeah, so this deck should run Rabbles, some Scar for Scars, the Phantasmal 1 for 7s.
Ooh, CNC with 2 reacts.
And we know that Luke wants that card in his arsenal because it's been there for 45 minutes.
Here's a Nourishing again. Surprised he didn't throw a foam skill at it too. I don't think we're going to see any value getting with that. Unless he's scared of the mangle.
So now
Eshghy coming out.
Okay. We got an Eshghy.
That's
putting in some work.
Do here.
It looks
I
like
don't recall. Does he have a Remembrance in his deck?
I don't know this list. I don't think he does, which is a bit of a problem. You would think that maybe that's a piece of tech you throw in going into this weekend, knowing that there's going to be a bunch of Oldhim here.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
That's not a popper. Yeah, just blocking. Oh, I guess it was. Maybe it was a yellow one.
It is a popper.
It must be a yellow one.
Nourishing. So we have Nourishing, Mystery card, and a Burn Them All at the bottom. I think he was trying to get to the end game. I think he was counting his pitch deck because he was counting to see if he could keep the ball up and get the second active.
No, it looks like we might have 2 D-reacts in his hand, which isn't doing much for keeping up tempo. Yep.
We can get the sequel activated.
And then he throws the Fate for Scene in the bottom, draws a Pass Mirage. So he's well into his at least 2nd cycle, but possibly 3rd cycle now. It looks like we have about 15 minutes left in the round, so they're both doing a great job of keeping up with time. I just have to wonder how many mistakes are potentially made playing in this pace. Luckily for Luke, it does seem like he's pretty ash-rich at the moment, so he can throw out these dragons on demand. We do see that he doesn't have any way to prevent them from being popped, though, but it does look like Luke either doesn't have poppers or he's trying to mitigate the counters on that ghostly.
I think at this stage in the game, you want to at least mitigate those counters. 14 is pretty high for counters.
Yeah, it's pretty high.
Threatening a lot of damage. So.
Now, unfortunately, I didn't really notice if Luke was actively pitching attacks to the bottom of his deck, because to make that ghostly really work well properly, you need to be able to throw 2 or 3 free attacks and then follow it up. You can't just swing for 14, especially with Trent at such a high life total.
I I do think that we have Intermission at the bottom, but I don't think it's happening. It's going to be quite challenging to damage here. 24 at 15 minutes round. Not sure what we're going to do.
Now, just a few months ago, Kael McCreath... Oh, we got 2 gems in this deck. Just a few months ago, Kael McCreath was yelling that we need to ban Remembrance. Do you feel like that's true?
No, I think Remembrance is actually a key tool that is used to counter fatigue.
Sure.
I think that when we see this level of degenerate gameplay, for lack of better terms, where we are able just to fatigue out decks, I think there's a core issue with that gameplay that needs to be resolved. I don't think Remembrance is at that.
Sure.
If you ban Remembrance, it just makes fatigue stronger, in my opinion, especially Oldhim, because you can just pivot to Earth cards, pivot to other cards that pitch for 3 and swing for 3. There's a lot of other options that you can go to, and I think versus just a tool, unfortunately, is caught in front.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's hard, right? They've hit Oldhim a decent amount already with the whale. I think the real bad guy, and everybody probably agrees, is the Crown of Seeds. I do understand where LSS is coming from. When I was a new player, they banned Crown in Blitz, and I had just built an Oldhim Blitz deck, which at the time, the equipment to build that deck was ridiculously expensive. All that equipment has come down quite a bit now. And I was furious. You know what I mean? I had just spent $120 on it, or whatever it was, on the Crown, and it felt real bad. I was really upset about it. So I can see where they're coming from. And I think that leads us to an interesting situation, right? It leads us to the Starvo situation, where it was like, this deck is overpowered. Everybody knows it's overpowered. It's actually actively making people quit the game. I knew a few people that just stopped playing because of Starvo. But he was racking up LL points so fast that they were like, well, we could nerf him, and he's still going to be a terrorist, or we can kind of just let it play out and give him a little nerf, which was the Earth.
I think it was Autumn's Touch.
Autumn's Touch, right? So, but then everybody just kind of switched over to the big horse. I can't remember his name. The card that allows you to kind of
Evergreen.
Evergreen, yeah. So everybody just switched over to Rainbow Evergreen, the big horse, for the fuse.
The big horse.
And I remember being in Discord and all of the Starvo guys going like, oh, it's so bad because now I can only block for 2, and everybody else being like, shut up, what are you talking about? Who cares?
Sorry, let me just go to the casino real quick.
Yeah.
And,
Bing, 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 bing,
dominated damage.
My favorite ever was the double fused Oakenold. Jesus, man. Get out of here.
Yeah, super fun. Love it. It's interesting because I think everyone's been complaining about Azalea getting big dominated arrows, but it's never on the same level as Starvo.
Sure.
You're basically getting dominated every other turn. Azalea doesn't dominate nearly as much.
Not as much.
Yeah,
no.
her arrows get pretty big, but it's never as much damage.
I would say Azalea is like Starvo light. Starvo with more steps.
Yeah, and it's easier to go into a game plan to defeat.
Sure. When we were talking to Nathan Crawford the other day, he said Azalea only asks you one question. And this kind of goes back to our friend Trent, who is an avid Guardian player. And he said, just play Unmovable. That's his response for everything. Just play Unmovable. Bravo's easy to beat. You just play Unmovable. But the issue with that is like, who wants to side in space for Unmovables in their sideboard? I mean, it might be necessary.
There are certain decks that can side it in for sure. Like a lot of decks that are resource heavy. Like Dorinthia. Dorinthia can just run shunts, right?
Of course, yeah.
Too. But for 5, like how many blues do you run?
Yeah, 15 blues on a good day. So do I really want to pitch my 1 blue that turns on my whole turn to Unmovable your attack? Not really, you know.
Pretty unfortunate hand here from Luke, it looks like. I mean, there is some damage we could threaten here. But
yeah. At the rate that Trent is losing life, I think we're going to be looking at a draw. I just don't really see Luke getting there. I'm hoping the best for him, just because you kind of want to see the bad guy lose. You know, Oldhim's the big bad boogeyman, but he's
the big bad boogeyman. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's so rough, right? Because you want to see this hero lose, but you also want to see him win, so he gets more damage. So we have to stop doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like I'm cheering for him, but I'm also avidly rooting against him.
Yeah, and that's where I was going when I was talking about Starvo. LSS was like, we could ban more important stuff, or like he could just die. And it only took 2 months. You know, he get released in February, and by May, he was pretty much gone.
I remember Chain was really close to Living Legend, or was he halfway? I can't remember. But I remember they banned Seeds of Agony, and everyone just stopped playing Chain. The problem was Chain was still a great deck.
Yeah,
Chain was still really good, but people were just so focused on Seeds ban that they just stopped.
Yeah, I think that was true of Fi as well when they banned Belittle. I stopped playing Fi for a while, and then I realized it was still a good deck until the new meta came out. I still love the deck, but it's not nearly as good with the new cards. But in the interim, between the banning of Belittle and the new set coming out, Outsiders, like it still did almost exactly the same thing, and it still could win. But people were so stunned by that. And you're right, with Chain, Seeds getting banned fundamentally changed the way that Chain was played, and I think for the better, because you saw the degenerate Rainbow Seeds, Rainbow Riftbinds, and that was the whole game plan, but it was, like, if we're being honest, it wasn't a great game plan, you know?
No, it wasn't a great game plan, and it wasn't a great game plan.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of options that opened up, especially with Creepers being brought in with Tales of Aria, too. That opened up a lot of interest. It's my favorite card. There's so many different interactions that you can do with that deck, and hopefully we were able to see some utilization later that comes up.
Yep. So we see Luke throwing a CNC on the table. They're both kind of counting their decks, counting their graveyards, checking for things. I think at this point, Trent doesn't really care. He's probably just going to throw 6 in front of it and keep up the game. I do think, though, if we're trying to avoid going to time, they should probably just pick up the pace a bit. We do have 7 minutes left. Trent is counting a bunch of stuff. He's looking at his hand. Maybe he's afraid of the Ghostly Touch, but again, the Ghostly Touch, from what I can see, I think we said 14. It's not going to kill him. So you just block 6 and you call it, you know.
I think it's hard because, like I said, a lot of fatigue just don't really have a game plan into actually closing out a game.
Sure.
There are different decks like Hughes deck where you do cycle the open worlds at the end, which is pretty interesting. I really like it. It's probably one of my more favorite ways to close out a game as a fatigue player. But at the same time, in Trent's deck, I don't think we've seen any cards played besides 1 or 2 CNCs. Most of the cards have just been used to pop or swing.
Yeah, we saw Hugh Wang the other day play 10 Oakenholds into
10 Oakenholds in one game.
Jesus, man, 10 Oakenholds.
As a madman. Took down the Scourge of Pasadena.
Craig Pollock himself was baffled at the situation. He said, why? Stop doing that. I remember that towards the end game, he said, stop throwing those at me, man. He was so over it.
Well, like we could get Craig for live commentary.
That'd be great.
He would be irate and just pissed off at the card that he used to win so many games.
Craig is so mild-tempered, though, that I feel like even if he was pissed, he would just be chill. He'd be like, yeah, it's...
I feel like he would laugh halfway through, right? I don't think that we would hear anything come out of him.
Yeah, yeah. So again, we're sitting here. We have 4 with no go again coming in, and everybody kind of just taking their time. It leads us to an interesting situation. I don't think anybody's intentionally stalling by any means, but I think that if you're in this situation, no matter who it is, you got to be like, hey, man, we got 6 minutes. You got to pick up the pace.
I think Trent's feeling pretty comfortable because this is round 7. He is, from what I believe, I don't think that he has any pressure to play quicker.
There we go. We'll get a Terra Sender and a
Choke Slam for 9 Dominate.
That's kind of like Oakenholds.
Yeah, it's Oakenhold light, right? You don't have to fuse. You just throw that on the board. I think I like this combo better.
It does a good job.
So if you were in LSS's shoes and watching this game, what actions would you take to, I don't know, change the meta for the better? Because when we got the announcement about Outsiders, I think it was James White who said that fatigue would no longer be a problem. Well, as we can see, it is still actively being planned and still actively a problem.
Yeah, I think, honestly, and I hate to say it because I love the set, but Tales of Aria was a mistake, man. It just was. And so until Oldhim gets LL'd, we need to get Briar out. As much as
so close.
She's so close.
She's holding on by thread.
As much as I love Briar, and really I love playing Briar, but I really love playing Chain. And as much as I love Briar, I don't really care if she goes. I just don't want the Thorn to go, which is why most people I think want Briar to go. But once those two are gone, we only have to worry about Lexi's degeneracy. And if the past couple months have foreshadowed anything, I think Lexi goes probably next after this. She seems super, super strong into the new meta, and I think that we probably...
I mean, the fact that you can shoot off 4 arrows a turn, even potentially, well, I guess you could do 5.
Yeah.
I'm very
yeah.
The fact that you can go that wide in a turn with that many card activations is insane. The fact that you can pump Rain Razors to 0 for 8 is insane value.
Yeah.
I think that card is probably insane.
You can see Trent's not even playing anymore. He's just having a chat on the side. Hey, buddy. Yeah, I'm over here. You got cheeseburger? Bring me a cheeseburger. You got another guy in the backpack. Yeah, about what, man? This is the quintessential. Can you explain to us the concession rules once again, please?
I'm wondering if this goes for the Ghost of Touch. I don't see any plan for him to win the game.
Yeah.
It just seems like this is kind of an uphill battle. He is at 17, so one activation of Ghostly Touch is equal.
We're in an interesting situation. It looks like Trent doesn't have any cards in his hand. I don't know if there is a judge situation here before he draws up or what's going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. They both seem to be having a good time, so I don't think there's anything serious.
If there's one thing that I can guarantee you, sir, is that Luke Shinn is not having a good time right now. If there's
a smile on his face, I know.
That's the go kick rocks smile right there, my friend.
Yeah, it is very unfortunate for Luke probably because he is 4-2, so he probably will end up on the bottom.
Yeah.
But what a great effort! What a great effort, Luke.
Good for him, man. I probably would have scooped 20 minutes ago.
You know what? I take pleasure in taking fatigue. If you don't have the game plan to win, we can't get there in time. I always try to at least beat him. It is a difficult game plan for some heroes.
I mean, I don't think you should be kidding. Like, honestly, as an aggro player, I'm probably biased in this, but if you're playing a fatigue plan, you fatigue me.
Yeah, I think that if you have one game plan in mind and you can't get there, I don't think there's any reason as to a player having to scoop. If there is a fatigue player on my side, I'm always with the expectation that we will probably end up going to time.
100%.
That's just how I see this.
And as somebody who knows their deck really well inside and out, I can play it really fast. So if you can't keep up with me and we go to time and you get a draw, that's on you, man. You know.
Yep.
I'm definitely not going to slow play anybody. Macho Grande comes out of the side. I don't know why. Maybe a card flew off the table or something. Who knows?
I'm unsure, but maybe it was like a card from the top of his deck that he drew 5 cards. Looks like that could be a possibility.
I think that's what happened.
So maybe they just randomized the card from the top of his deck.
That's why Luke was smiling. He saw an opening. He was like, "Oh man, give me the DQ. Give me the DQ." And the judge said, "Nah, we'll just put this one on top." Oh, okay, sick. So it does look like that was popped. We still do gain 1 action point back. So here comes the snatch.
Again, very unfortunate hands that we're seeing. There's just no go again. We don't have enough activations.
Yeah. We blew through it way too fast.
Damage.
Way too fast.
I don't see many parts left. Trent might get there.
Trent's getting a little saucy using his equipment. Good for him. And he realizes, oh, wait, that's the first time I had to use it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. I don't have to throw it away yet. I still got one more use out of this.
It's like, before you draw up, I'm just going to let you know that hammer for 4. And next turn, hammer for 4. And the turn after that, hammer for 4.
It looks like 2 cards left in deck. So I don't think there's a
well, we got about 2 minutes left in the round, so if he's going to win, he better do it now.
I will say they did play both.
Of course, yeah. Until that very last moment, everybody was kind of on their game, which is great.
Yeah.
It is dominated. I trust it.
Goal is to have all remaining cards.
Yep.
I don't know if it's enough.
Go to 14.
The man blocks 3. I don't know if it's dominated. I don't think it matters. Maybe he throws 10.
Yep.
Take up that burn 'em all. Here we go. Now, it does look like instinctually you go for the attack. So it does look like that did have dominate, which gets us to 5 cards. However, there's only 3 cards left in the deck, so maybe you just draw the rest of your deck.
Well, get an arsenal here, draw the rest of your deck.
Call it a day. Oh, and there it is. There it is. Luke's face. Just take the 14, man. Don't be scared. Take the 14 and send the boys. Send the boys.
Send the Phoenix Flame.
I have done that.
What's going to do? -2?
That's true. I have done that. Playing as Empress, I've thrown the flame because sometimes that extra point of damage actually matters.
This will block with. Yep, there you go.
Woo!
Yeah. Nice. Now, we have 18 counters. We do have passing guard hand. We have time step.
Let's go, Luke. This is your moment, buddy.
I don't know.
Here we go. It's happening. Throw the flame first, man. Oh, God. Oh, it's going to hurt.
I think he's going to do it.
Oh, but he has 2 passing mirages. What do you have in hand, bro? 2 passing mirages. Oh, this round's on me.
He can play the this round's on me to draw an extra. I think we just got to the pitch cycle a little too late.
Little too late.
No.
He had the best intentions and the right idea.
There is an Asmolai in Arsenal.
Okay, here we go.
That.
Here we go. Here we go. We'll drop that. Drop your other dragon.
Okay, so before we make any actions, this is like when decisions have to be made, right? Correct. If you'd like to make any decisions, it would be before any
Well,
looks like we are out of time, so this is the last turn. Is the last turn?
I think there was a little bit of an extension time.
Okay.
Probably because of the judge call. So he's probably thinking.
What do you think Trent is saying right here? He's like trying to sell him like a used car or something.
Sure.
He's like, if you buy the Toyota Camry, the 99, I will throw in free car washes for a year and 6 oil changes.
And one oil change. But
Just
5
one.
of them are for half price.
Yep, 100%. Also, our oil changes are $100.
Congratulations, you've been played, sir.
Congratulations, Luke, you played yourself.
Yep. Yeah, I think this is. I don't know. I think we have one other dragon. Is Dromai or Yendera?
It really needs to be a Dromai. That's what it really needed to be, was a Dromai. You get your 2 action points.
Dromai might be good.
Yes. You crack your potion, you play a Dromai, you swing the Dromai, you swing both dragons. Yep.
We can draw another card.
You swing both dragons and you drop the ghostly touch and maybe you get there. He needed a Dromai.
It seems interesting to first.
He needs to swing that flame. The flame's not doing anything, man. Swing with the flame. Why? Don't do it. Ah, what? Gonna opt a couple.
But those.
Is there a world where if he drops Dromai here, he goes Dromai 3 action points because of passing? Oh no, because the arms still get popped, I guess.
Yeah. So we do still have 2 action. No, we have 1 action. Mm-hmm. So he can pop this in just a turn, right?
Yeah.
Taking the 1 arcane, taking the 2 arcane with 2 floating. Wonder if he has.
Oh, he ends his turn. Interesting. Okay. Does he have a popper in hand? Yes, he does. And it looks like Luke calls it. I didn't see a block, so you got your winner, Mr.
Assuming he took the game.
Yep, Mr. Trent McBride coming on top in round 7.
6-1.
There we go, baby. All in all, good game, bad game?
It was a long game.
It was a long game.
And that wraps up the Swiss rounds of the Battle Hardened Richmond. So we're going to jump right into top 8 after recapping all the rounds we saw so far. And, I do want to apologize. There was a Guardian pretty much in every round. It wasn't intentional. It was just what was winning at the top tables, and we wanted to show the most competitive decks leading into the Pro Tour. So as the top 8 formed, we saw Matt McInnes, Pat Eshghy, Jody Burney, Trenton McBride, Merrick Kemp, Lucas Bannigan, Devin Ratteni, and Brody Spurlock, of course, squeaking in at 8th to round out the top 8. The meta overall for this event was very Dromai heavy, and we did see Jody, the one who was on camera earlier, make it into top 8. Across the board, though, some significant dips in the likes of Phi, Icelander, with everything else about where you'd expect. Now, to note, of the less represented heroes, somehow even including Azalea, Bravo, Uzuri, and Dash, they all had a top 8 representation. So the meta was looking very varied, with Oldhim still being the deck to beat. So as we approach top 8, the narrative very much was who can take down the deck. And spoiler alert, no one really could. Let's take a look at our top 8 sponsor. Oh, sweet Leviah, let's just clean you up for camera a little. And there we go. Hey, I'm ManSant, and I'm here to tell you about a great analytical tool for Flesh and Blood that I really enjoy and will help you level up your game. Fabrec, found at fabrec.gg. If you play or have played Magic the Gathering, you're probably familiar with EDHREC, a powerful website that has become a community staple with useful content and data analysis. Fabrec is made by that same great team. What Fabrec does is gather a huge amount of competitive deck lists from a variety of sources and then provides useful insight for each hero and the formats in general. On the homepage here, we can see all the heroes from Flesh and Blood. It's defaulted to show both the young and old, but you can set your tab to Blitz or CC only if you'd like. And here we have Dromai Ash Artist, a powerful and new fun hero from the Uprising set. Instantly, we can see statistics taken from the average of all the deck lists for Dromai. Now, the first thing you can see is the card distribution, pitch, and cost averages. As expected, Dromai has a high number of red cards, and a high number of 0 and 1 cost cards. Additionally, this card distribution chart shows the significant usage of defense reactions. Now, as we scroll down, you will see the most commonly played cards in Dromai separated by their type. Notice the high usage of Phantasmal Footsteps, and lesser so with more niche cards like Crowned Reflection that you normally see coming up in a Dromai's sideboard. Now, scrolling down further, we get to the juicy part, what I definitely want to see, the most popular dragons. Notice how Invoke Chromai, Kyloria, and Miragai are showing up nearly 100% of the time in Dromai decks. These are clearly the staple dragons you want to start your deck with. Now further down we see the dragons people tend to pass up on in their Dromai decks, namely Vincerikai and Themai. So back at the homepage, there are similar data for all the heroes in the world of Wraith. It's a great way for new players to explore each hero and see what cards and types of cards that hero likes to use. Additionally, you can check out the most popular cards in Blitz and Classic Constructed in their Staples tab. Here we see the most popular generic cards that are showing up in each deck, which is really useful for deciding which to invest in as you are getting into the game, since these cards are being used for sure across multiple heroes. Similarly, you can see class staples on this page here, and don't you know it, I'm going to go ahead and click on Brute. Now, as expected, here are the most popular cards by type that are used across each Brute hero, including our favorite, Leviah. Now, we'd like to thank you for tuning into the video here, and be sure to check out my content on ManSant at YouTube, streams, gameplay, everything to do with Leviah, and keep your eye out for Fabrec as well. Future features for sure. Try it now, a great tool for Flesh and Blood players right here on fabrec.gg. Okay, I'm jumping back in because Michael Hamilton, who is featured as our top 8 caster, didn't record an intro. He's the freaking world champ, and yet is too humble to even plug himself, so I'm doing it for him. We've got Michael Hamilton and Pankaj Bhojwani, who you know as Ethic Smoke, taking it away into our top 8.
Okay, so we have the first top 8 match over here between Oldhim, which is being piloted by Pat, against an Uzuri being piloted by Devin out here. So we're just going to start with some key cards in this matchup. The main thing is that Oldhim is going to capitalize on his ability to prevent damage without actually putting cards on the board, because those cards can have their defenses reduced by Uzuri's daggers. So something like Crown of Seeds and Oldhim's Earth React are going to be very, very key in this matchup. And another thing that I expect to be a little key in this matchup is a card like Endless Winter, which can really pressure Uzuri's ability to swing with daggers and then come in with an attack because of the additional frostbites that Endless Winter will create. The other thing is that if Endless Winter is fused, every time Uzuri puts a card to defend, they get a frostbite. And since this is a bit of a mid-rangey matchup, that can really swing the tempo into the Oldhim's favor. On the other side, we have Scale Peeler on Uzuri to combat Rampart if the Oldhim chooses to run it, and cards like Shred, which really punish the Oldhim for putting some blocks. Now, Michael, why don't you go into some of the high-level strategies you expect both these heroes to employ against each other?
Yeah, so like you said, Oldhim's going to be trying to prevent damage without putting too many cards in the discard. Since neither of these heroes are great at pushing a lot of damage through an opponent that doesn't want to take damage, it can be a matchup that goes to fatigue. So both players are going to be looking to play pretty card efficient, and generally Uzuri is the one that's more at risk of fatiguing. Whatever weapon Oldhim presents is going to be more powerful than the daggers that Uzuri has. So the pressure's kind of on Uzuri to push some big turns through where you either get some very impactful disruptive on hits and some damage through as well.
Definitely. Okay, so as these players put their equipment out, we do see that, yep, the Oldhim did bring a sledge, and on the Uzuri side, it is the same loadout that we saw from Sam Dando, which is the Scale Peeler with the Vambrace as well, and the Scale Peeler. So, given that the Oldhim has presented Sledge over here, how often are we going to be expecting them to actually activate Crown of Seeds, and how much value do we really expect Devin to be able to get out of this Vambrace?
Yeah, I think this Uzuri setup is definitely prepared to fight against Rampart plus Crown on the Oldhim side, with Scale Peeler and Vambrace being very good against Rampart plus Crown of Seeds. But we don't see the Rampart, and I think that's like a lot of points for Pat already just going into the game just from equipment presented. I think Pat's definitely favored from this.
Mm-hmm. And Pat with the highest seed here choosing to go first and drew a pretty red-heavy hand from the looks of it. I believe I saw Pulverize and 2 Sink Billows. And then just chooses to Arsenal, and of course remember to tick up his Tunic, and we're over to Devin's side.
Yeah, Sink Below is a great card in this matchup because you can respond to Uzuri's activation with the Sink Below, but 2 in your opening hand's probably not ideal.
Yeah, and at the same time, since you are also running, you aren't expecting to activate Crown of Seeds that much, having the D-React in your arsenal is kind of perfect. Like, you know, you're not going to be crowning it away, you'll just be using a D-React from there. And here we see that the Uzuri is definitely the more red line version. I believe there's some contract versions that are running around, but we see 2 reds in a pitch zone swinging with a Spider's Bite.
Yeah, definitely not ideal to have to spend 2 reds on it, but...
Definitely. All right, following up with a Backstab. Now, those Sink Billows kind of become awkward over here because Backstab obviously says you can't play defense reactions to its Chain Link. And if, say, a Command and Conquer is swapped in, then it would have been a hold no D-React case this entire Chain Link. But it was swapped in with a Shakedown, which D-Rex can be played. Pat just responds with one of those Sink Billows and covers it up completely.
Counter on Tunic.
Yeah, and this is just kind of the power of the Sink Below is you just spend 1 card, you block 4, and you can do it after Uzuri swaps. So you don't have to commit any blocks beforehand. You just wait for the swap, and then you can play your Sink Below and just cleanly cover things up.
Definitely. Right, so we're back over to Pat over here, and you just use the 2 cards to swing the Sledge over here, pitching that Pulverize for later in the stack, which, as we talked about earlier, this game likely goes to second cycle, so we'll probably see the Pulverize come in handy later on in the game.
Yeah, definitely. And this first Sledge attack, I expect we'll see this a lot of times throughout this game.
Especially with Pat going into a Tunic turn, a Tunic on 3 turn following up after this. Now, do you expect that Tunic to be used primarily for Sledge here, or do you expect it, maybe sometimes being used just to crown the Arsenal away, or maybe an Endless Winter or something like that?
Yeah, I think if Pat's using his cards to defend, He'll probably prioritize using the Tunic to swing Sledge after spending so many cards on defense. But here, there's not really a reason to use it for the Sledge because he just was left with extra cards after the Earth reaction with the Autumn's Touch.
So Devin over there just swung the dagger, and then Pat just went for an Earth React. Devin activated Vambrace, but the Earth React still swallowed up the entire dagger hit, and then Devin just passed. And now we see Pat follow up with the Endless Winter, which, as we talked about earlier, can swing the sort of mid-rangey style that both players want to play. However, this wasn't fused, so it won't create Frostbites as Devin defends. One thing I do want to point out is Pat's pitch over here. So the previous turn, we did see him pitch a blue and a Pulverize, and now we see him pitch a blue and another red. So there is a small chance that the Pulverize comes in with another red in that final hand.
34, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Took 2 off the first one.
So Devin's only blocking for 4 here. He's taking 4 more damage. So hopefully he has a pretty big hand to present back. It's going to be, he can't really swing the daggers unless he has extra blues.
That'll be it for me.
Unless he has a blue to do it. But
Yeah, so that could possibly be why he only blocked 4 there. Maybe he wanted to keep the extra resources to be able to swing a dagger. Now, we don't quite know what mode was chosen for this E-Strike since he hasn't drawn a card yet. Okay. He's representing it with a Go Again. So, E-Strike, Go Again, not the most efficient use of an E-Strike. Typically, draw cards are most efficient, followed by the 7 attack. So, let's see what Devin wants to follow this up with. Of course, one nice thing about starting with the E-Strike over the dagger is that the Endless Winter on-hit ability is not affecting Devin at all as of now, and you can reasonably expect this is going to be followed up with a Stealth Attack and an Uzuri activation, again, being able to dodge the Frostbite tags from Endless Winter with that line of play.
Okay.
yeah, notably the Uzuri activation will give a Frostbite, but by the time the Frostbite is in play, Devin will have already done everything that he wants to do.
Exactly. Unless, of course, he wants to activate Vambrace or something like that, which probably won't have cards remaining. And also, very critical to note that he actually does not have access to Tunic this turn because of the Endless Winter on hit. Because as he goes to activate it, he'll get a Frostbite, and then the Tunic resource would be wasted, essentially.
Yeah, you'd have to just go into paying for that Frostbite.
Mm-hmm. Okay, followed by Leave No Witnesses, and we talked about this earlier on. Uzuri does have a lot of Arsenal disruption, but against a deck with Crown of Seeds, again, we don't expect it to do too much. So we see that Devin ends up leaking 2 damage and does get a banish off the top. Now that could be relevant if it goes to that deep, but he'll probably likely need to get a few more banishes off some of his cards to really capitalize on trying to deck Pat out.
Yeah, Uzuri's just naturally going to be a little bit behind in the decking fight because, again, Sledge is so much more efficient in terms of how much damage you're presenting without spending cards compared to the daggers. But it definitely can add up, just banishing cards with Leave No Witness.
Leave No Witnesses, Sledgical Extraction is, I think, the other contract card that they run. And I believe some Uzuris also just start running Plunder de Poix as just a 0 for 4 that banishes, and against a lot of decks does hit reasonably often. However, we do see that Devin has elected not to bring any of the assassin equipment, so it's not like he really is looking to get silver to do anything with it. But of course, banishing stuff off the top could still be relevant.
Yeah, mostly just mattering for fatigue. There could be a world where he has a blue heavy hand and wants to sacrifice a silver to just draw a new card, but his deck is pretty red heavy, so it's not super likely that it would come up, but it could.
And over here on Devin's side, is that a Plague Hive? I think I see a Plague Hive. Very, very interesting. Do you want to talk to us about Plague Hive in this matchup and how relevant do you think it is? Or, does this swing, is it possible for this card to swing the matchup into Uzuri's favor slightly?
It is a card that does matter quite a bit in the matchup. Both Blood Rot and Inertia are pretty impactful tokens to hit, and even the Frenzy token does matter against the constant Sledge swings. It just means you'll take 1 less damage from that. So Plague Hive definitely adds a lot in this matchup.
So we have a very cool situation here with both players having drawn their fabled gems. Pat out there with the Heart of Findal in his pitch zone, and Devin here with the Plague Hive in his hand. And opting to take 4 there, just putting a Fate Foreseen in front of the Endless Winter, which was unfused again.
Yeah, unfortunately, pitching the Plague Hive to swing a Spider's Bite does mean he's going to get a Frostbite from the Endless Winter here, so that's not great.
Yeah, and again, he does not have access to the Tunic to help pay for that Frostbite, because as we talked about, activating Tunic will just give you another Frostbite. So, you got a Frailty here, which I think probably the one he wanted the least out of the 3. I think we just talked about how Blood Rot is, potentially 2 points of value. Inertia is a lot because it turns off Crown of Seeds. Frailty is 1 point of value, so still better than, just pitching a yellow. But probably the one he wanted the least.
Crown.
Here we see Pat use Crown of Seeds. One of the few times we've actually seen him activate that. I'm guessing this is partly because he isn't afraid of a Vambrace because of the Endless Winter on hit. Activating Vambrace is going to give Devin another Frostbite, so... He's saying, I can just soak up the Spider's hit with my Crown of Seeds this turn.
Yeah, definitely just very safe from it. We might also see a staunch response here, something for him to do with the 2 resources floating. It's kind of hard to tell what's in his hand, but that would be a potential advantage of just leaving 2 resources floating.
You get a Frostbite.
Yep, and Devin here now activating Uzuri. Now, Pat is deciding whether he wants to respond before the swap actually happens, before the Uzuri ability resolves. Choosing to sync before the Uzuri ability resolves. So very heads-up play by Pat over here, playing around the potential swapped-in card being something like Command and Conquer, which says that defense reactions can't be played to his chain link. So you do it before the swap happens, and you still get to play a D-react.
Yep. Just very clean play from Pat, playing around everything.
Definitely, and Death Touch, another potentially... Well, devastating is probably too strong of a word, but potentially very strong on hit, because landing an Inertia on an Oldhim is one of those few turns where you can feel like you can actually push past the defenses.
So, this Frailty is actually doing what Inertia would, or doing better than what Inertia would do, since Pat's not going to have an Arsenal here. It's just stopping 1 damage off the Sledge swing.
Of course, yes, that's a very good point. So in terms of pitch stacking over here, one thing about Uzuri is that because they're so redline and they keep swapping reds back into the deck every time they activate Uzuri, do you think there's a bit of an edge that Uzuri has in the long run, given... In the long run, Oldhim has the advantage because they have the better weapon, but do you think Uzuri can maybe have an advantage of her own where she has more reds left in her deck later on, whereas, Pat has stuff like blue Sow Tomorrow and blue Winter's Grasp left in her deck towards the end?
Yeah, there's kind of a window towards the beginning of second cycle where Uzuri's still drawing all these powerful red cards and Oldhim's going to be drawing all the blues that he's pitched. Because of Crown of Seeds and because of how strong Oldhim's weapon is, usually there's like room to get some reds to the bottom, and even if you don't, you can still use your blues to swing your weapons pretty happily. So I wouldn't say it's like huge for Uzuri here. It's kind of a pretty tough matchup in general, but there is hope that you can draw a pretty strong pitch stacked red group of reds, or pretty strong pitch stack turn, and use that to push through damage early second cycle.
Counter on Tunic.
So we see Devin that previous turn just swing the dagger and then come with the E-Strike for 7. Pat leaked a couple of points of damage and then just is following up with a Sledge. And these sort of turn cycles have definitely been lending themselves to Pat a little more. Pat has just been constantly leaking a little more damage than Devin has been able to do throughout this game, as we sort of expected when we talked about the difference in the weapons.
Yeah, noteworthy, Devin hit with the Scale Peeler there, but Pat just had 2 Channel Lake Frigids, so he was still able to just block for 6 on the Enlightened Strike, even through the Scale Peelers -1 for attacks.
Definitely. Spider's Bite. Yes.
Sorry, the Spider's Bite, thank you.
26, sir.
Yep, Oldhim. Also surprising. Yeah, 2 Channel Lake Frigids to completely ignore Spider's Bite. Definitely a bit of a fortunate draw on Pat's side, but then again, I mean, most of Oldham's cards block 3. Even something like Terra Sunder is another 3-block non-attack to get around the Spider's Bite.
So Devin's kind of like just setting these attacks in, and Pat's pretty easily so far been able to block them out. We haven't seen any of Devin's most powerful cards. I think of the Codexes as potentially the most strong cards that Uzuri really has access to. And once we see those, we'll probably see him get some damage through and get some advantage from them. But until then, he's really having trouble just like falling behind to the powerful weapon that Oldhim has.
Definitely, and also Pat's access to all these Z-Reacts. We've seen him always have the sink below, or the sink below for Devin's swaps in. So he's not even pricing Pat into making inefficient blocks by blocking 6 on a 3 attack. And over here, we see him even respond to this command and conquer switch in with a peace of mind as well. So Pat does seem to have always had the answer to Devin's swaps in, to Devin's swap ins. You know, however you should say that.
Tunic to gain a resource.
Yeah, and that's also part of what can change once you get back to the second cycle is Pat's using all of his strong defensive tools in first cycle, and it's definitely helping him get ahead at this point. But once Devin gets back to his second cycle, maybe there's like a window there where Pat's used most of his good, strong defensive tools, and Devin can really look to push some damage at that point.
Definitely. It does feel like a lot of this game comes down to the second cycle and who's able to set up, more threats in that second cycle. Or whether Devin's able to set up enough threats in the second cycle. Now, Pat there with a very strong turn cycle, just activating Tunic and pitching a blue to swing the sledge, and because of the Ponder left over from the Peace of Mind, still able to Arsenal at the end of the turn. And here we see Plunder the Poor coming out from Devin. One of those cards we talked about earlier, where even if this touches the Oldhim, they lose a card from the deck, which, as we talked about in this matchup, is a very valuable resource.
Yeah, and Devin has 2 cards in hand and 1 card left in Arsenal, and also chose only to block the sledge with 1 card. So if you're Pat here, you kind of can expect Devin has something to do here.
It looks like Pat was expecting a pump, but Devin actually kind of, probably threw him off guard a little and actually went ahead and activated snaps over here. Pretty aggressive use of snaps pretty early in the game, before we've even reached second cycle. Do you have any thoughts on this snaps activation here?
No response.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he did have some pumps to get through. We see a shred in his hand, and then when you see Pat overblock with 2 cards instead of using the pump, that makes sense to just cash in your Snapdragon Scalers instead.
Yep, and here we see the Vambrace finally come into play. It's stopping the one damage prevention from Peace of Mind, and then the Shred is stopping the Pummel, and this is leaking 3 from the Death Touch. Now, of course, I think Devin would have liked to give Pat an Inertia, but because of the Ponder, Pat can easily just play around the Inertia by letting the Inertia trigger first and then the Ponder. So instead, Devin pivots and chooses to give him a Blood Rod.
And the Blood Rod is going to get 2 damage through here, so it's definitely worth quite a bit.
Definitely. Now, I want to come back to the Codexes that you were talking about earlier. So, Codex of Frailty, almost certainly Devin is running those in his deck. But do you think he's also running something like Codex of Inertia, which I know some ranges are starting to run? I've seen in some Lexi lists, some Azela lists. I'm not too sure the Assassins are running it either.
Yeah, I don't know if Devin is on Codex of Inertia. I think it's pretty solid against Oldhim specifically, because we were talking about really wanting to give Oldhim the Inertia tokens with Death Touch and with the Plague Hive. Just Codex of Inertia just gives that Inertia token on its own. The biggest risk, though, is if you're playing a copy of Plague Hive and you play a Codex of Inertia and put that Plague Hive into your arsenal, you don't really have a good way to get it out of there. I guess there's the 1 Crown of Providence, but short of that, it's just stuck there for the whole game.
Yeah, you get 1 get out of jail free card, and it's similar in Lexi, as in we're talking about Plague Hive and Gems in Lexi. It's like they run Heat Seekers and also running Codexes of Inertia, and it's very scary for them to have that 1 copy. So looks like Pat is leaking 1 from the Spider's Bite. Devin did go ahead and activate the Vambrace after Pat activated Crown of Seeds there into this Isolate, which does have Dominate, and Pat's attacks are now blocking for 1 less because of the Spider's Bite on hit.
Block for 2. Reactions. Uzuri? No responses to Uzuri.
So this Command and Conquer only blocking for 2, but of course Pat leaving the 2 floating from the Crown of Seas was probably prepared for something like that, and of course responds with an Oasis Respite to cover the Shakedown completely.
Yeah, and Pat's really just having the answer every turn for what Devin's doing. Once again, just completely blocked out, and then here comes the Sledge again for 6, probably. Oh no, no Sledge this turn.
Command and Conquer this time. So this is an interesting dilemma sometimes in the Guardian Mirror, where if you're going to be swinging 6, whether it's CNC or whether through Sledge, a lot of times I know in the Guardian Mirror you prefer to just send a Sledge, because it's going to get blocked out anyway, but that's one more card you've left in your deck in the form of the CNC if you pitch it rather than if you send it. Do you think that same sort of tension exists in this matchup?
It can, but not usually to the same extent. Uzuri, again, the weaker weapons make it really hard to fatigue you or get fatigued as Oldhim into Uzuri. So it kind of makes sense to just keep Uzuri off the powerful hands, the powerful 4 and 5 card hands where she can send a weapon, play an attack, and have multiple tricks to get through your stuff. With the CNC, you're forcing the 2 card block or the Crown of Providence to go away, and you're less worried about running out of cards in your deck, because that's really only likely to happen if you just start falling way behind in life and you have to like overblock because you're going to die if you don't.
Yep, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And the previous turn cycle, we saw Devin swing the Spider's Bite, Pat just Earth reacted, and Devin still activated Vambrace to consume the Earth React and came with a 0 for 4, which did leak in 1 damage, and Pat lost another card off the top of his deck from the Leave No Witnesses. But overall, these turn cycles definitely seem to be favoring Pat a lot more. We see him have gained a 10 life lead into Devin at this point in the game. But of course, he has used a lot of the defensive tools from his deck, as you pointed out, Michael. So let's see whether he can keep this life lead as we get into the second cycle.
Yeah, we still have a little ways to go to second cycle, so I would expect some more defensive tools to come out. But once we get there, then that's when things might change for Devin.
Yeah, although he has lost quite a bit of life before we've hit second cycle, so it does make me wonder whether he's going to be able to keep the hands that he wants to keep once he reaches second cycle, or is he just going to, end up dying to the Sledge?
Yeah, that's definitely possible, or just be forced to block with so many cards. It's hard to put anything powerful together. That's definitely a risk with how much damage Devin's taken so far, to kind of keep hands that have honestly swung these Spider's Bites a lot of turns, but not really ended up presenting a lot of damage or getting much damage through.
Definitely. And we don't know how many cards these players have brought into this matchup. Do you expect both of them to be reasonably above 60 cards in a matchup like this? Or do you think Pat doesn't quite care because he just has the superior weapon?
Yeah, I don't know how many cards Pat would bring. It wouldn't surprise me to hear it was 60 or more than 60. Devin probably is playing more than 60 though.
Right, so that also leads to the second cycle coming even just a little later as well on Devin's side, if you're running more than 60 cards.
And it looks like Pat isn't blocking anything here, just taking all the damage.
Yeah, it looks like he has a Rouse the Ancients in his hand, if I see correctly. Devin getting a little unlucky there off the Rabble, hitting the Surgical Extraction, which is one of the 5 blues in the Uzuri list. So he's definitely not too happy about that.
Yeah, definitely unfortunate for him there.
Yep, and we see Rouse revealing Spinal and Thunderquake. So reasonably can expect there's going to be a Sledge follow-up, or maybe that Arsenal, which we don't really know what it is.
I think I would be surprised to see the Arsenal come out. The only way that I would want to play it over Swinging Sledge as Oldhim is if it's Command and Conquer and you see Devin block with 1 or 2 cards on this Rouse, then maybe you can play this Command and Conquer and try to get that Arsenal, or force him to block with cards he doesn't really want to block with.
Right, that makes sense. And we also see a Codex in Devin's hand, so this is definitely looking to be a turn that he doesn't want to be blocking with cards. Although, I do wonder with Pat's blocking decisions previously, whether he'll elect to go with a little greedy Crown of Seeds into Spinal Crush, if he draws the resources of the Crown of Seeds. But that is, of course, a very risky and greedy line.
Yeah, the biggest risk of that is if you draw another red, then you can't even swing the sledge anymore because you'll have 2 resource, or you can still swing the sledge, but if you draw another red, you'll have to pitch all of your cards to swing the sledge, both the 2 reds in your hand, and then you won't have an arsenal, which is a pretty big cost for that line.
Yeah. So it looks like Devin's blocking 6 on his rouse and leaking 1. Okay, so it looks like Pat is going for the Crown of Seeds line. Let's see whether he draws the blue. And he did. So he did elect to go for the more aggressive, slightly risky line, but it looks like it did pay off for him. And Devin, with that Codex in hand, is not very happy about this. You can't, if you get crushed, you can Codex, but then you can't actually use the attack that you Codex in. And if you don't want to get crushed, you're forced to block with this Codex, which is a 2 block, which it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, hopefully for Devin, he can just block the Spinal Crush and then play out his Arsenal and Arsenal the Codex for the following turn. I think that would be the best outcome at this point for him.
Yep, and we might even... I wonder if he's thinking about using the Crown of Providence block here, but again, it's not something he's going to be happy to do.
Good turn, sir.
So he's tanking a little here. Pat definitely has put him in a bit of a awkward spot here. I don't think Devin was expecting the aggressive line. Obviously, Rouse the Ancients, you know, Pat revealed that he had the Spinal Crush in his hand, but Devin, looking at the blue and the red, was probably just expecting the sledge to come right after, and Pat choosing to hold the Arsenal, but this seems to have thrown Devin quite off guard.
Yeah, I wonder if we're actually at the start of Pat's second cycle and he knew his top card was a blue. If you know your top card's a blue, this line looks much better on Pat's side. He's activated Crown quite a few times. I could see it being a spot where he actually knew his top card was a blue.
And I have actually just noticed, Ethan did actually a very good job with his recordings. We actually see the turn counter in the bottom left of the screen. So that was turn 11 if that turn counter is right. So could have been at the second cycle, though I don't think he's activated Crown quite that many times. So probably very soon though, looking like it.
Yeah, with 60 cards, turn 11 wouldn't be enough to be at second cycle, right? Because it'd be 4 cards per turn would be 44 cards, and he'd need 16 Crown activations in 11 turns to make up the difference there.
Yeah. Oh, also, we actually even saw the Pulverize being pitched pretty early on, so the fact that that hasn't come around means that he's not at the second cycle.
Yep, that's true.
Okay, so Pat electing to give up Arsenal again to send a Spinal. He really just doesn't want Devin to even get a chance to resolve anything big.
Yeah, he's at a spot where he's getting pretty far ahead. He just needs to keep Devin off big turns. So he whittles Devin down to a spot where Devin will have to block every sledge swing. So it makes sense to just prioritize playing these Spinal Crushes out. And also saw that hand had 2 reds and a blue. If he sledges and arsenals there, then once he's going to end up pitching a bunch of reds together again for the following cycle, and that's something that he wants to avoid.
Absolutely. And we see Devin with a very interesting block. He blocked 8 on the Spinal, of course only needing to block 6 to stop the crush effect, electing to use his Crown of Providence there. Probably to just try and filter one of the bad cards in his hand and really just try and steal some tempo back from Pat over here.
I guess it was on the turn where you revealed the blue and you just were like, I'm not going to play another one. Yeah, I had 2. I'm not going to play another one. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
and
how that got down there, I guess.
Pat's Ice React here makes a lot of sense. Just making sure that nothing too crazy can happen. Now this Rabble's coming in for 4 and he can block it for 3 and present something back on his turn. Probably a Tunic activation and a sledge, and then having a card left over for Arsenal.
Yeah, and that feels really bad for the Uzuri player because you've invested a whole card to swing a Spider's Bite that, you know, just came in for 1, and then your 4 damage card that left you open to the Ice React, which, you know, removed your potentially 4 damage card in the form of that Ravenous Rabble. Now Pat, with the Spider's Bite on hit, electing not to block this Rabble at all. Of course, his attacks will be blocking for 1 less, so he's choosing to just be more aggressive, as we've seen him do, you know, pretty much this entire game.
On Tunic.
Yeah, and actually I think Pat's hand here is 3 reds, so he can't actually use Tunic to swing the sledge and block with the card since his hand was all reds at that point.
And that's where E-Strike comes in. Really good card for bailing you out of all red situations. Now, I do want to point out Pat's decision to sink a card there. He sank a Sink Below to this E-Strike and is electing to keep the Pummel in his arsenal, which really just goes to show how aggressive he's trying to be in this matchup. I mean, obviously, aside from the decisions we've already seen him make, that decision in particular, leaving the Pummel in arsenal instead of Sink Below against Uzuri, really tells us the sort of mind state that he's in right now.
Yeah, I think he feels really far ahead at this point, and he just wants to close out the game before something crazy happens.
Yep. And Devin, speaking of crazy things happening, Devin played a Rebel, revealing a red Pummel off the top, which I believe is a one-off in the Uzuri list. So, potentially one of those crazy things that can happen, but it does look like Pat has drawn into that Pulverize. And I can't tell the color of the Staunch Response in his hand. But if that's a blue, he does have Tunic up to be able to just send the Pulverize at Devin after this.
11.
Yeah, and sending the Pulverize when you have a Pummel in arsenal is kind of perfect, because not only do you send this Pulverize, that means they're not going to really have a turn. Otherwise, they're not really going to have a turn after you send the Pulverize, because they either have to block with everything or they're getting -4. Then having the follow-up of a Pummel after your opponent spends probably their whole hand blocking and leaking some damage, then you're going to get to keep your 4-card hand plus this arsenal. And one of those cards being a Pummel means you're almost certainly going to be able to present quite a bit of damage on the following turn.
Definitely, and that is one of the problems of Guardian sometimes. So you try so hard to get the tempo, and then you struggle to keep it. And like you said, having a Pummel in arsenal is one of those tools that lets him keep that tempo. Now it looks like Devin has put a Codex of Frailty on the stack, and Pat is deciding whether he wants a Crown of Seeds in response to this. Is looking to be the decision over here before either of them needs to choose what to put in their arsenal. So it looks like Pat does elect to do the Crown of Seeds. So he gets that floating, he gets his pick of an attack in his arsenal. He will need to discard for this. But he did basically kind of get a Crown of Seeds activation out of it.
And you mentioned that Staunch Response earlier. Having this Crown of Seeds activation plus Staunch Response lines up really well against a potential Death Touch or any one-cost attack that Devin might play off this Tunic counter, where you spend 1 resource the Crown and then 2 to play the Staunch Response.
Absolutely, and even if that's a blue Staunch Response, that combined with the Crown floating can cover up a Death Touch completely. And another thing we haven't really touched about is that Pat still has his armor. Like, not only has he had the life lead and the tempo lead, he also still has his Crater Fist. And it's a little difficult to see the boots piece, but we can reasonably expect that's either Iron Hide or Iron Rot that he still hasn't used.
I thought you were going to get Death Touch.
Yeah, so Pat's definitely solidly ahead at this point with having that armor left over and having the life lead, and after cleanly blocking this attack here. Well, presumably cleanly blocking this attack here.
Yep. And we see Devin opt not to take a Death Touch, probably choosing to save his Tunic counter instead. So, very heads-up play by him. I think he got the read that Pat probably had a Staunch Response in hand based on the Crown of Seeds activation, leaving the 2 floating. So he's saying, okay, you're going to be using the 2 resources anyway. I'm going to save my Tunic counter and just send this Leave No Witnesses at you instead of using my Tunic counter for the Death Touch. So very, very solid play by him there.
Yeah, definitely very heads up. It just resulted in the same thing happening, except he got to keep his Tunic counter, which could end up being worth a lot later on. We'll have to see, but definitely just keeping resources and getting the same outcome from your turn is a great spot to be.
Absolutely. And we see Pat over here using the E-Strike that he put in his arsenal from the Codex of Frailty, of course coming in for 1 less because of the Frailty. He did choose to give it a go again, so we can reasonably expect a Sledge Swing after this off of the Tunic and the blue in his hand, which would also get another -1 from the Frailty. So that Codex of Frailty actually giving Devin a lot of value here, and goes back to what you were saying earlier, Michael, about these codexes potentially being the way that he gets back into this game. And we see already here the amount of value he got from it.
Yeah, we saw not only did it get back a Leave No Witnesses for a 4 damage attack, it also is saving 2 life on the attack from the E-Strike, between the attack from the E-Strike and the Sledge. So that's 6 points of value, plus it drew him a card off the Ponder to get an arsenal. So that's basically 6 points of value, plus it replaced itself. It's huge here.
Block 3. 3, take 2.
Absolutely. Now let's see whether he's able to capitalize on this. Now, Pat doesn't have an arsenal going to Devin's next turn, which could be the opening that he needs. But again, we did point out Pat does still have all his armor, so let's see what Devin can do with this opening. See, so starting with the Nimblism. Now, Nimblism is a very, very interesting choice in Uzuri. Now, I do know, of course, Sam Dando did run this in his Uzuri list at the Chicago Brawl. Interesting thing is that +3 doesn't carry over to any attack that Uzuri swaps in. So it is pretty telegraphed that it isn't going to be an Uzuri swap coming in. And the worst Pat would need to be afraid of is another pump.
Counter.
Yeah, and that could be good in some spots, but against Oldhim, where, especially without swinging the Spider's Bite first, it's pretty easy for him to just block out when all your damage is face up like that.
Yep, and I don't think we've seen any other pumps from Devin. Like, we've seen the shreds, but I don't think we've seen any spikes or razor's edge, or even, you know, cut to the chase, which probably wouldn't see much play in a list with very few contracts. But I don't think we've seen the spikes or razor's edge from him. Just shreds so far.
Yeah, that's definitely noteworthy. So Nimblism with Leave No Witnesses, I think, is the best combination. And also it plays really well with Death Touch, where if you have a Death Touch in your arsenal and you play a Nimblism and then attack with Death Touch for 9, that's a really powerful turn.
Absolutely. Or even the what's come to be a line that I've come to really fear from these assassins is Nimblism into Codex, and then you get a Death Touch and you make them discard, and then you tunic Death Touch for 9. Oh, that play is just disgusting.
Down to 3.
It looks like Devin lost that pummel that we saw revealed from the Rabble a few turns ago to that Command and Conquer.
Yeah, it looks like Devin had the 3 block to kind of get in front of it if he wanted to. So maybe he just knew he didn't have a lot of pummel targets left in his deck going into second cycle.
Yep. Or it could... We don't know what the last card is in his hand, but, you know, if the other 3 block was just this Infect, which could be the last attack in his hand, he didn't want to just pass a turn over to Pat over here. That could have been the other consideration. So again, as we talked about earlier, this is a similar spot where the damage is practically face up for Pat. And I think Pat's looking through Devin's graveyard just to see whether, you know, maybe there's some pumps that you didn't notice, like any spikes or razor's edge. Because without that, this Infection is going to be 6, and that's all it's going to be.
Yeah, and 6 is pretty easy to block with 2-3 blocks. But if it is something like a spike and Devin uses Tunic to play a spike, then that could be a spike with Blood Rot would be 2 Blood Rot Pox tokens that Pat would take, and that's quite a bit of extra damage if he just blocks for 6. So he's just making sure he knows what's in Devin's discard and seeing if there's any copies of those cards to worry about.
Definitely, and this does look like we are at second cycle, so we see the Pulverize back in Pat's hand, and as we talked about, this means that Pat is lacking those defensive tools that he had in that first cycle, that we saw him use, you know, very aggressively early on, using all these things, a lot of his staunches early on. He doesn't have them anymore because we have reached second cycle, and here we see the Shred come out from Devin, leaking this Infect on hit through, which is another +2 damage.
Counter on Tunic.
Yep, so that Shred was really good. It was basically worth 5 points there. So getting the Blood Rot Pox through and getting 3 more damage through because Pat couldn't block.
Absolutely, and we see another Codex back in Devin's hand. I wonder if he's going to use this all. It looks like he might be thinking of blocking with it along with that Sink below. Yep, does choose to block it.
Yeah, it's not great for Devin because the Codex is definitely one of his strongest cards, but if the hand kind of lines up like that, that's how the hand lines up.
Yeah, I think I see a Surgical Extraction and an Isolate in his hand over here. So Isolate, not bad, of course, means that Pat can only put 1 card in front of this, and then, you know, Devin can swap in a card. But with that card being Surgical Extraction, Pat can always just Earth React after it to cover it up, or even just put a bit of armor in front of this Isolate to guard himself against that. So let's see how he chooses to respond to those reactivation. Oh, he just responds with a Red Staunch, which we also did see him pitch in that first cycle.
Yep, this is, I think, probably his last defensive tool. I don't know if there's some blue staunches left, but I don't think we have any more red defense reactions left for Pat. So if Devin does have an opportunity to put together a pretty strong hand, he might get some more damage through. Unfortunately, down to 3 life, the sledge is just going to be eating 2 cards every turn for the rest of the game.
Yep, and this was what you pointed out earlier, that at this point in the game now, we are at second cycle, Devin still has threats left, whereas Pat is, out of his defensive tool, drawing lots of blues, but Devin just is unable to keep hands right now to utilize his maybe slightly stronger second cycle compared to Pat.
So, under the pour, and I believe another shred from Devin is going to thread some good damage here. And notably, this Vambrace is still sitting in play, so if Pat wants to Earth React or Crown of Seeds, Devin can just use his Tunic to activate the Vambrace to get 1 more damage through.
Absolutely. So Pat, try and line up the blocks here, to try and decide how much he's going to respect any shred or any sort of other pump from Devin over here. Just blocking 3 for now, not representing anything else. Devin, of course, has the option to just say no reacts here and maybe leak 1 in, get a card off the top of Pat's deck. But of course, that means you're leaving Pat with 3 cards in hand and a card in arsenal, which, when you're at 3 life, probably not a very comfortable spot. So let's see what he chooses to just use the shred out here.
Yeah, and we do see Pat's hand is 2 blues and a pummel. So he could pitch 2 blues to swing the sledge, have 2 resources floating, and then the red pummel would be 4 extra surprise damage to potentially finish the game this turn.
It's a very fun thing just happened. We see Devin actually get a piece of silver because Blunder the Poor hit a Sword Tomorrow, which does, cost 1. So Devin's rich.
Yep. Unlikely to get a chance to use it this game, but he does have silver.
Yeah. All right, so Pat out here, I mean, how telegraphed do you think this pummel is? With him leaking 1 and then, swinging sledge, leaving 2 floating.
Yeah, it's pretty telegraphed here, but there's not really much Devin can do to play around it. If Devin overblocks for 9, then he's not really going to be able to present much back, and he'll be in the same situation the following turn, where Pat just needs to keep 2 blues and the pummel, and
I don't think
that would basically decide it.
Absolutely. But if he blocks 9, that Pat just doesn't use the pummel, and then that's a sort of really sticky end game you can get into against Guardians. And yep, looks like the pummel did close the game there. So looks like Pat moved on to the top 4, which I guess isn't really a secret, but yes, Pat does move on to the top 4. Yeah, very well played by both players here. Any closing thoughts from you, Michael?
Yeah, this matchup kind of played out how you kind of want it to as the Oldhim. So Pat had all the defensive tools the first cycle to line up with all of Devin's threats. Very, very little got through in the first cycle. There was 1 codex that led to a huge turn, but Devin ended up having to block with the other 2 codexes and just didn't lead to very much with, or he never had a good turn to get a lot of damage through without having those other 2 codexes. And yeah,
definitely. And he was sort of forced into blocking with the other codex that we saw that he had. So that'll be it for the first top 8 game. We will see you in the next one, bringing you the top 4 match.